Hi guys, welcome to our baking ingredient series. In this video, I'll be covering the different types of fats and oils you can actually use in your baking. So when you're baking, most recipes are either going to call for butter or they're going to call for margarine. So today I'll be sharing the different types of fats and the differences as well as what you can use in your baking. The first ingredient I'm going to cover that's a type of fat is butter. So most of it, if you're in Kenya, you're going to see something like this. This is unsalted butter. Most of them come packaged in this kind of packaging. This is a 500 gram container. So it can be 500 grams or 250 grams, and sometimes it goes a little smaller. So basically you want to be using unsalted butter when you're doing your baking. So butter is the original animal fat that you're actually supposed to be used for baking. It is superior quality and gives you really good cakes or bread or puff pastry or even croissants. So when you're using butter, remember you want to use unsalted butter because the salted version tends to be extremely salty. And when you bake it in a cake or use it in pastries, you can feel the aftertaste of very salty. So make sure you're using unsalted butter for all your baking. It's the best fat. It's always going to give you the best taste. And if you're looking to make quality products, you always want to use unsalted butter. The second type of fat we use for baking is margarine. So margarine was originally created to actually be a substitute for butter. Now butter tends to be highly perishable because it's an animal fat. It usually lasts 3 to 4 days, in a fridge maybe 5 to 7 days. So generally margarine was created to substitute for butter because it lasts longer, and the other thing is that it's also cheaper, especially in the African market. So margarine basically imitates butter, it just doesn't have the best taste, but it's the next best thing. So if you have a recipe and it says butter and you don't have butter, you can use margarine. So an example of one of the brands that you can find in Kenya is this type of margarine. And they come in smaller containers from like 50, 100, 250 grams to 1 kg. And they also have 5 and 10 kgs. So we call this retail margarine. So if you're baking, you can use this instead to actually substitute for butter. The thing to note about margarine though, guys, is that margarine comes salted. It's not as salted as butter. It doesn't have a very high content, but it has some salt in it. So what you want to do is if you have a recipe that calls for salt, once you use margarine, don't add salt onto that because it's going to become very salty. So every time you use margarine for any baking, don't add any salt because it's salted already. But it's basically the best substitute for butter. So pastry margarine is a specific type of margarine used by bakers, and it has a very high fat content, 80 to all the way sometimes to 90%, and it's used for pastries like puff pastry, croissants, or flaky pastries and pies. So it's used also as a substitute for butter because butter does give you the best results. But if you're looking for economy or something that's going to last longer, hotels and other commercial businesses generally use pastry margarine when they're making those pastries. Please do note that pastry margarine isn't as highly salted, so that one you can actually add salt content to your pastries if you're baking them. So if you're looking to get into the puff pastry, croissant kind of niche, you can use pastry margarine in your baking. The third type of fat that's used in baking is cooking fat, or shortening as some people might know it. Now that is white fat, basically raw white fat, and it's usually the lowest quality fat you can actually use for baking. A lot of commercial bakers use it in bread making, and then some of them use it for cookie making. Generally, we don't advise for you to use this because it's very bland and it doesn't have any taste. But if you're looking for a budget or economy type of clientele, that's really the only type of fat you can use. So some people use it for cake making, bread making, or even pastries. But it's the lowest quality fat you can actually use when you're baking. Now, people do sometimes use it for frosting, but we do tell you not to use it because this is raw fat and frosting is generally consumed without cooking. So don't use it for frosting, just use it for your baking needs. Another type of oil that can be used, or a type of fat that can be used in baking, is cooking oil. You may know it as salad oil, vegetable oil, and here's an example of the type of oil you can find. So this is just vegetable or palm oil that is liquid, and you can actually use it for baking. Now, it's very common when you're making pastries or types of breads, but some people actually substitute when they're using it in cake. Now, when you're using it in cake, I do like to tell you, it gives you very moist and healthy cakes, but it tends not to be as effective when it comes for volume, because you need a type of fat like butter or margarine when it comes to getting volume in your cake. But you can actually use it in your cake if you don't mind that reduction in height, and if you don't mind a moist cake that might not be so fluffy. You can also use it alternately, like you can use half butter, half oil, or you can use half margarine, half oil. You can use it that way if you're looking to use both of them, if you want texture and you're looking for moisture. So vegetable oils are perfect for breads, and you can also use them for some pastries, but not all pastries. Another thing is that you can actually use something like olive oil, the more quality oils, if you're looking for a different tasting bread, but they do tend to bring in a kind of different flavor when it comes to making cake. So you want to keep to less stronger flavors or less stronger oils when it comes to baking cake. Keep it to vegetable, palm oil. You can use coconut oil, but olive oil does tend to be very strong in flavor and smell, so you really don't want to use it for cake. But you can use it for pastries, flat breads like focaccia. You can use it for Italian breads. It works very well for breads. Those are the types of fats you're going to find in your recipes when you're baking. So I hope this video has been really helpful. If you have a question on any types of fats or oils you may have encountered, feel free to comment below. Do leave a comment, please. Like this video and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you guys next time.